To begin, there's lots of ways of opening the image, but if you have Photoshop enabled, right-click, Open With. You should be able to choose Photoshop from another app or from your menu. And then you'll have an image like this. We're going to distort this figure. I'm going to show you a comparison. So I'm going to try and make this figure become this figure. The first thing to do is to make sure you're working in the right background and unlock it. Next, we're going to use this tool, which is automatically open at the bottom for you, called Select Subject. If it's not there, hit the select bar and it'll appear for you. This is going to use a bit of AI to manually, or automatically rather, select most of the figure. And then I'm going to clean up what we want. The easiest and quickest way is to right-click over here on Object Selection Tool and choose Quick Selection Tool. From here, we can add some bits that we want to keep by having the Addition button. And I can select those areas I'd like to keep, noticing that I've got this area down here, and of course the rest of the jacket. I'm interested in his easel, his palette, or his hands, or his brushes, as long as I've got as much as I'm comfortable with to play around with. And the next thing I do is, there's a couple of ways I can do this. I can either copy and paste this. Alternatively, I can get rid of the background, and to do that, go back to the Select tool, click Inverse, and then on my keyboard, hit Delete, and it leaves me with this. Next, select, deselect. Let's suggest I want to change the size and shape of the head. Again, there are lots of ways of doing this. I'll try and demonstrate 2 or 3. Right-click on my Marquee tool, which is for selecting areas, and I'll click the elliptical marquee tool here. I'll click to one side, and I'll select the area of the head I want to change. From here, I go to my Move tool, and here I can then change the size and move position. If I hold the Shift button down on my keyboard, I can drag it out as well. We'll do some more distortions of the head later, but now I'll agree to that. Next, let's lengthen the legs. To do that, let's change the size of the canvas and make it bigger. I go to Image, I go to Canvas Size, and I'm going to lock my figure into the bottom left corner, change the width to 1000 pixels and the height to 1500 pixels, and click OK. Now I'm back over here. My magnifying glass and fit screen means I have this to play with. If I click on my Move tool, I can move that figure around completely. And I'm going to put him quite close to the top now. Now, let's get his legs longer. Back to my Marquee tool, and I'll choose Rectangular Marquee tool. I'll select his legs, and now I'm just going to want to straighten them up. So I'll go back to my Move tool, and I go to Edit, and down here I'll see Transform, and I'm going to select for this purpose Warp. And I'm just going to drag in those legs. Again, there's lots of ways of doing this. I just want to show you some different ways which you can manipulate the figure to distort them. I want them quite straight because I'm about to elongate them quite quickly. And again, I'll agree to that by ticking. Next, I'm going to drag them out. Here, of course, if I hold the Shift button down on my keyboard, it'll just stretch those legs. And I'll take them all the way down to the bottom and agree to that command. Now, select, deselect. I can go back to my Move tool, I can go back to Edit, and I can go back to Transform, and I can go back to Warp. And I can play around with the figure and start warping and shaping. And of course, there's another way to do this, and that's the way we're going to use right now, which is the Liquify tool. So now what I want to do is open this layer here, this figure in Liquify. filter, liquify. That'll open in a new window for me. And here's my new window. And now, of course, I can do a whole host of things. I can use my bloat tool, and I can bloat the chest out. I can use my forward warp tool to lift the chest. And of course, I can change the size here as I see fit. I can do lots more. I can drop that shoulder down. I can bring that arm in and lift it up. I can even skinny the legs a little bit and drag them down. There's lots more I might do. I might zoom in on the head. Go back to my tool, my forward warp, and I can start pushing and changing and shaping. I can even pucker, shrink his head a little bit. And I can continue playing around with this until I'm happy that I've got something passable. I'll click OK, and that will render it for me. And of course, the last thing I need to do is save this file. File, save as, Photoshop, and then save it as a Photoshop file. I don't want to save it as a flat JPEG yet. While we're working on this, we'll start looking at how to use the generative AI tool to fill in the background. First, I'll change the workspace so you can see what I'm doing. And I'll now work with this figure. Select all, and I'm going to click on Generative Fill. And from here, I can choose what I want. Foggy, night, London, on a bridge. Generate. You'll see over on the right here, there's my prompt. It'll give me 3 variations to begin with, and I can choose from those. This is a good way to play around with generating composition. Now my figure's in the wrong place, but I can click and drag my figure forward, and I can go back to this layer. I can decide on the tools I want. Maybe I'll change the prompt. Foggy, night, Dickensian London. Generate. Now you can add your own layers in the background, but we don't need to do that for this purpose. And again, I can change what I want. From here, I can play around with the backgrounds and change the colors. And I might now choose to File, Export, Export As, and the format will be a JPEG. Quality will be high. This will now flatten the image, and it will save it to a place of my choosing.